Hello. Sarah here, just getting set up for tonight's live stream. So last week when we did a live stream, I also streamed it to Instagram. And about 90% of the way through, my phone died. So I'm getting my phone plugged in. Perfect. Okay. Hello, Carol. Hello, J. Michael DeAngelis. Hello. Okay, we are also, if you see me looking over here, hi. We are also live on Instagram right now. So hello to everyone. We're going to be talking about creativity tonight. And I've got right here, I've got my tea. It's in a duck mug this time. So I've got my duck mug full of tea, which I plan to enjoy with great abandon throughout tonight's live stream. But before we get started, hello, Ashley. Before we get started, how's everybody doing? Who here? I kind of want to say who's doing okay, but I don't want to leave anyone out in case you're not doing okay. I don't know, who here has been working on a creative project lately? If you've been working on a creative project, let me know in the comments what it is you're working on. Hello, Kevin. Ashley says, I waved back, but you can't see me. Oh, you're wonderful. Nerds Amalgamated is here. Private Island Presents is here. Jimmy is here. Kevin is here. Hello, everyone. Let me know if you're working on a creative project. Oh, Private Island Presents says, hey, Sarah, glad you're doing another live video. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I like doing live streams, and sometimes I have to remember that before I jump on here with you guys. I get a little nervous. Okay. And I'm going to probably say your name wrong, but Jairo Morales says, I've been writing a novel based in Seoul. Greetings from Lima. Hello. Pure Bastard says, I love your podcast. I find it very helpful as I begin my creative journey. Thank you. Good. Oh my gosh. Nerds Amalgamated says, I can't do much. I've been working too much. Jimmy says, I'm wobbling like a World War I fighter plane with shredded wings and a smoking engine, but I'm still in the air. Okay, good. I feel like that's a very accurate way to describe how a lot of us are feeling about our creative processes right now. Kevin says, I'm trying to make a resume for the first time. I'm still confused, but I think I can manage. Don't know if that's creative, but it's something. Yeah, it's creative. Anything that you're working on right now that takes creative energy, creative brain power. If you're looking at how to word things, how to organize your resume, that's creative. Yeah. J. Michael DeAngelis says, we're moving forward with our show. We did some fun Patreon stuff today, and on Sunday, we're getting together on Discord to do a live table read of the next episode and then send people off to record. There we go. Sorry, I always forget. I'm also doing the live stream here on YouTube and Facebook, and I have a little software program on my computer that lets me post people's comments. Jimmy also says, I've been up to some measurable level of creative shenanigans. Jimmy has been doing live streaming. There's just, let's see. Yeah, I'm going to keep the comments up here. Yeah, there we go. But I also want it to not say we'll be starting soon anymore. How do I get my name back up, do you think? Hey, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Leslie Gideon. Hello. Leslie is a voice actor who does a very fine job. Says, I've worked on a fiction audio drama for 2 years and just passed off the completed scripts to my amazing cast. Hey, cheers to you, Leslie. My gosh, that's a huge milestone. Ashley says, how about getting ready to talk about you on TV tomorrow? Oh my gosh. For those of you who are able to tune in, I'll be on I'll be on Callow Land Living tomorrow, talking about, a lot of us are at home, working from home. A lot of us own our own businesses. How do you stay top of mind right now? Well, the answer might have something to do with podcasting. So tune in tomorrow. I think it's at 2 p.m. Central Time. And watch us there. Peter says, what is your YouTube channel called? I prefer watching on YouTube and not Facebook. If you just look for Sarah Ray Werner, I wonder, here, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to reply to you, Peter, if I can do this without breaking everything. Okay. Oops. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, no. Now we're getting feedback. Okay. But Peter, I think I replied to you, so you should be good. Okay. So, yeah. So there's a lot of people working. Oh, thank you. And Tim just posted it too. Hello, Mike is here. Hopelesslyhope.jpg is here. Hello. Sarah J. McFerrin is here. Hello. We're talking tonight about creative stuff. And some of you who are joining me are podcasters. Some of you who are joining me tonight are writers. Some of you don't consider yourselves either, and you're maybe television hosts or artists or just my friends and family who are here to support me. Thank you. I love you all. You're wonderful. But we're going to talk about what it means to create and what it means to get stuck creating right now, because the title of tonight's live stream is Creating is Hard, because creating is hard. And we're all here trying to do this same hard thing during a weird, uncertain, and difficult time. And I want to talk about it. So, oh, hi, Shannon's here. Shannon is the creator of Oz 9, which is a fantastic sci-fi audio drama. It's funny. I like it. And it's, well, I won't get into the nitty-gritty of it, but you should listen to it. Say What You Will podcast is here. Hello. Empress Nikki is here. Hello. Oh, you're all so wonderful. Okay. So I was working on, I'm going to back up a little bit. So those of you who know a little bit about me and the work I do, you might know that I have a fictional podcast called Girl in Space. And it is, for those of you who maybe are kind of new to the podcasting arena, or, you don't know a whole lot about it. There are fictional podcasts and they tell a story. So you may have heard of like Welcome to Night Vale or The Black Tapes or Limetown. Those are some pretty famous ones. Q Code Media makes a lot of really good fictional podcasts. So does Gimlet. Oh, perfect. Peter made it to YouTube. So good. I'm glad you made it, Peter. Life 100 podcast just joined us. Hello. Yeah, there's fictional podcasts. And so I made one back in 2017, and it's called Girl in Space, and it's the fictional story of a girl in space. And I created it during a time of change in my life. And I created it when I was still full-time employed. And I was working 40 plus hours a week, and I was volunteering, and I did a lot of stuff with my life. Those of you who have seen the webinar I put together about 4 steps to a seriously successful podcast, my whole story's in there about like all the stuff I was doing while I was making Girl in Space, and like what happened and how that contributed to everything that was going on. But a lot of times, I think a lot of us create things in order to deal with what's going on in life. And there's a lot going on right now, but that doesn't mean that creating gets any easier. I mean, obviously. And I want to talk about this because there's so many fine lines, I think, that we as creators are walking right now. There's the line between knowing when to stop and take care of yourself versus knowing when to push through and create because what you're creating is important for other people. we talked a little bit last week. If you were here for last week's live stream, we talked a little bit about self-care and about knowing when to take a break, knowing when to understand what season you're in, and being able to say, hey, I'm in a season right now where I just need to be a parent and take care of my kids because none of them are in school right now. Or, hey, I'm in the kind of season where I've been furloughed from my job, and I'm one of the lucky people maybe that is furloughed with pay. And so um, I can afford to work on a creative project right now. Maybe that's you. But even then, even if the circumstances seem perfect, it still can be really hard to create. So the reason I want to talk about this today is because I have had a difficult day. I went on a walk earlier with my husband, Tim, and as I was walking, I was sort of having, we'll call it venting. I think maybe it was really like a sort of mini tantrum, but we'll say that I was venting in a very productive and adult way, and I was definitely not storming along the path saying like, I just suck as a creator and everything is terrible and all of my best work is behind me, and now that I'm working on season 2 of Girl in Space, I've lost all of my creativity, or I'll never have a good idea again. I don't know. If you've ever thought something like that, whether you are a podcaster, a writer, fictional podcaster, non-fictional podcaster, whether you're a voice actor, if you have ever felt like saying, I don't have any creativity left, or I don't know why I bother doing this, or I don't feel good enough to do this, let me know. If this is you, let me know. I was on this walk today, and what I had done was I wrote last night. I wrote probably about 4 pages of the first episode of season 2. Yes, I am rewriting it because that's a whole nother long story. But I wrote last night, and then I read it this morning, and I was like, oh my gosh, everything I write is stupid, and my characters are stupid. And it's not even that my characters are stupid, it's that I'm so stupid, I can't even come up with more than 2 different types of characters, or I can't even imagine what this type of person would be like, or I no longer feel like I have any ideas for new characters other than what I've come up with in the past. Or, even worse, well, maybe not worse, but like, I style myself as a creator, but I just feel like I'm writing fan fiction for something else. And, that's not anything against fan fiction, because I love fan fiction. And that's actually one of the ways I started writing. Was I didn't know it was called fan fiction at the time, but long story short for another day. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of people say, yes, Cabaret of Words said, that is me in my art life since graduating a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Yeah. Like, where did my creativity go? Where's the ideas? Give me the ideas. Where did my ideas go? Pete says, I have a difficult time envisioning a Sarah Werner tantrum. Thanks, Pete. I am not always the smiling tea drinking person you see in front of you. For those of you who have missed it, I have my duck mug this evening, and it's full of tea because I'm being good to myself. J. Michael D'Angelo says, every time I put pen to paper or finger to keyboard, I feel that way. Jimmy Bice says, every day. Shannon says, yep. Okay. So this is not new to any creator. I've mentioned this in these live streams before, but one of my favorite TED Talks by Elizabeth Gilbert, she talks about like, hey, I made a thing. And in her case, it was wildly popular book, Eat, Pray, Love. Hey, I wrote Eat, Pray, Love, and people want more books from me. And I don't know if I have more books inside me, or I don't know if I have any more good books inside me. What does that mean for my future as a creator? And a lot of this comes from getting in our own heads about what things we've created in the past mean. And for me, having Girl in Space come out and be successful when I wasn't expecting it to, I don't want to say like, oh, that really screwed me over for the future, because it didn't. It's great. I love that it was successful. But it's really twisting around in my head right now. Is how do I create something that resonates? Because when I first did it, I created season 1 of Girl in Space in 2017, which is like 3 years ago now. Oh, Harrison is here. Transcaster Radio is here. Hello, friends. I'm talking about what we do when we create something and we think we're kind of the worst. Because I've changed since 2017. I'm not the same person I was in 2017. And you're probably not the same person you were in 2017. But I feel like to create season 2 of Girl in Space, I have to return to the person I was in 2017. And that's not true. We can't go back to who we used to be, even if we feel like that previous self was more creative. We can't go back to being that person. And we shouldn't go back to being that person, because we've grown and changed for a reason. And probably it's very, very, very likely that we've become the person that we are today because we created that thing. The Writer's Life on Instagram says, it's amazing when you create something for yourself and when you're creating for more than that, right? Oh my gosh, yes. That first season of Girl in Space, well, the first episode of Girl in Space, I just made for myself. I made it for fun. I didn't make it to be successful or a hit. I made it because I wanted to make it. And that was a completely different mindset than the mindset I'm in right now, even though maybe it shouldn't be. Because back then, in 2017, I wasn't thinking, oh, how do I not disappoint my fans? How do I write something good enough that people won't be like, oh, sophomore slump. She used to be good. Now we can write her off as a failure. Oh, I'm terrified of that. I'm so terrified of that. I'm terrified of... Here, let me just like tell you all of my deepest fears right here on this live stream. I am so terrified that season 1 of Girl in Space was successful, and it was successful because it was a fluke. There's a loud car going by. And if I make something that's not good for my second published project, then people will just say, well, okay, we know her true colors now. The true colors of failure. That's what I'm afraid they'll say. Oh, Tim and Carissa, hello. I'm just so afraid that people will see that the next thing I create is not as good or not as successful, and they'll just pass me off, or they'll just, invalidate my existence, if you will. Transcaster Radio says, I believe season 2 will be great, but I have those feelings of doubt in myself too. Oh, absolutely. Jimmy says, it is tough when you accidentally create a success. J. Michael DeAngelis says, what color is failure? Puce. I feel like that sounds like a failure. Puce as a color, like it sounds like you have lice and you're puking. So I feel like that's it's pretty failure-tastic. And it's funny because the more of these live streams I do, the more I realize how much of everything comes down to fear and failure. How much of creativity is the fight against fear? How much of creativity is the struggle against feeling irrelevant or like a failure? Mm, I'm getting a lot of really good comments here. Yes, the writer life says a lot of it. Yeah. Um, Waves and Games says it's sophomore album syndrome. People want your second album to be the same as your first. Oh my gosh, exactly. And for season 2 of Girl in Space, I'm changing things because if people want season 1, they can go back and listen to season 1 again. It's there. It will always be there. It's free. It will always be free. Oh, hi, Carrie. Carrie's one of my high school friends. Hello, who is now an author as well. Joshua Fisher says, I feel that doubt every time I push the publish button on a podcast episode. Yep. Yeah. Tim says, you've created a universe in your head where everyone is mean to you, including yourself. Yeah, a lot of the time we're our own worst critics. And I don't know, more than 50% of the time, I think that the things that we fear don't come true. But those fears can still control us. If not for, days and weeks at a time, then at least for, hours at a time. Shannon says, is it possible to get back into the mindset that it's just for you, or is that gone forever? That's a really good question. And I want to keep this as general as possible so that it applies to as many people as possible. But I don't know if it's about getting back into the mindset. I think that it's understanding that I think it's more understanding that I'm allowed to have fun while I'm creating, and I'm allowed to like get back to that place, which is hard. Oh, Chad. Okay. And I need to read you this comment too. Chad says, it's also hard to pick up again when you know exactly how hard it can be, as opposed to when you're doing it for the first time. Ugh. That's so true. I don't know if I should share this with you, but I was thinking about this the other day, and I never want to treat PTSD lightly, but I feel like I almost have a little bit of lingering trauma from some of the really hard things I went through while I was creating the first season. A lot of pain, a lot of fears, a lot of doubts. And yeah, that's really, 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 really real. Yeah. And Mike echoes, I think that when you start, you don't know enough to be scared. When you start to learn things, that's when the doubt creeps in. Yeah. Speaking entirely for myself, you're speaking for me too. When I first started creating large audio projects, I didn't know how hard it was. And I just sort of dove in in a blissful ignorance. I dove in thinking, oh, this will be fun. I'll just write the first episode. Oh, and then I'll produce the first episode and record it and get it out there. And oh, that's easy. And then you get on to the 13th episode, which is the finale, and you have to like wrap up all these loose ends, and your cast has grown to 17 people. And you're just like, I can't make this good enough. This ending is not good enough. So yeah. Oh, Stephanie says, I like to create for that one person who will be encouraged and built up. That's a really beautiful way of thinking about it. So I teach a course called Podcast Now. You can see the little logo. Well, You can't see it on Instagram, but if you are in one of the other viewing platforms, and I talk about knowing your audience and understanding who your audience is. And it can be so important to know during the writing process or during the creation process or during the branding process who that audience is. And sometimes it's okay if it's you. So going back to Shannon's point, I was my own audience in the early days. In the early days of creative writing, I've always been my own audience. I've talked before on this live stream about the little drawer of unfinished novels I have here right next to me that nobody's ever going to read. Michael of Mountains says, I always ask myself, how would my outlook be different if I assumed good things were going to happen? Ooh, this is not always easy for me, but it's good for me to keep in mind. Yeah, what if good things happened? That would be kind of nice. I think a lot of us are afraid to get our hopes up because I don't know if it's better to be disappointed potentially if good things don't happen, if you did not have your hopes built up in the first place. So like, is it better to like crash high hopes, or is it better to not have had any hopes at all? I don't know. And we can't know the future a lot of the time. The Writer Life says, that makes sense. I've been teaching my kids to reframe problems and opportunities. We need to do the same thing for ourselves. I love that you say that. That is, that's a really, really good way of thinking about it. Joshua says, there's also the fear that after you've had several projects fail, that you'll always fail. It can also stifle the creative process. Yeah. Yeah, I've been through a lot of failures, and I'm sure you have too. I have another, I have a Facebook group called I Am a Writer, and a writer recently posted a rejection letter they had received. And they're like, this is a relatively kind rejection letter, but what do I do if it's like ripping my heart out? Does it ever get any easier? And I think you get more used to it, but it doesn't mean that it hurts any less. And for those of us who have faced failure before, which is every single one of us, including you, for every single one of us, it can be easy for those failures to keep us down. It can be really easy for those failures to keep us down. And a lot of the time, Shannon was talking about mindset earlier. A lot of the time we stay in that place of defeat, and we stay in that place of thinking less of ourselves and doubting our ability to create and wishing we were smarter or more charming or better read, or that we had a larger audience, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We find ourselves feeling not quite up to the task or not quite enough. John is here. Hello. Takara is here. Hello. Thank you all so much for being here. I feel like this is an important thing to talk about, is that creating is hard. Creating is hard right now for so many reasons, for so many people. But it's always been hard. I think that sometimes we are biased. It's interesting because sometimes we're biased to remember the good, and sometimes we're biased in favor of the bad. So when I sit down to write, sometimes I think about, that great feeling, and maybe you know this feeling, maybe you get this too, of when you're like writing along and all of a sudden you're like lost in what you're writing and it feels amazing. You lose all sense of time and you're just there in your head with your characters, or you're there with the meaning of what you're writing, or you're really connecting with your audience. Whatever it is, you're in the zone, you're in flow. You are in the zone of genius, whatever it is you want to call it. You're there. So sometimes we remember that. And like that feeling can get me in my chair. That feeling can get me here and writing and remembering, oh yeah, creating is great. I love writing. I love creating. I love podcasting. What a fantastic feeling. Why don't I do this every second of every day? But then there's the experience we bring with us of, oh my gosh, I cannot do this again. Oh my gosh. I had to rewrite that draft 9 times, and then it still got the worst reviews out of everything I've ever created. And I just can't do that again. And we've all been there too. And both of those experiences, I feel like, are constantly living within us. Shannon says, there are days when the Libsyn numbers, so those of you who are podcasters, Libsyn is a hosting service. It's the one I use. They're very good. There are days when the Libsyn numbers can determine my mood for the day, and that bleeds into creativity too, both for good and ill. Yeah. Stephanie says, back in the olden days, I taped all of my paper rejection letters together, carried them to the front of the room, dramatically unrolled them, and proceeded to teach the kids that the ream of paper was evidence that I was at least trying. Good, Stephanie. There's the older we get, the more experience we get, which is good, right? Because our experiences make up our lives, and they give us the fodder that we need to create meaningful things. So the more experiences I have, the more I learn, the more I grow, the more I understand how other people interact and react and think and learn and process. And this is all really good stuff. But also, we get more and more data sort of jumbling up in our brains about what we can and can't do, and what it means for us to try to create something. Jimmy says, this is me. I love writing. This is wonderful. And then the wall springs up like an Acme Incorporated running gag. Yes. Yeah, the wall just springs up and slaps you in the face. I want to say a lot here. Speaking of a lot of things going on in your brain. So at least I'm capable of having thoughts, and that's good, right? We're here having thoughts. We're here feeling the impulse to create. We're here remembering both the good and the bad. There's a Right Now podcast that I recorded years ago about the negativity bias, and how, I don't know if you've ever had your work reviewed, but if you're a podcaster, maybe you've gotten a 5-star review, maybe you've gotten a 1-star review before. Our brains are wired to pay extra attention to the 1-star review. It's a survival technique because, you think about, this person ate poison berries. I have to remember not to eat those poison berries, right? It's a survival tactic. So we tend to remember the negative. And so that 1-star review for your self-published book on Amazon, for your podcast, whatever it is you've created, it stays with you. And maybe it's shouting a little louder than the 5-star reviews that you've gotten. I know that that's definitely true with me. But we're still compelled to create. And even though we're compelled to create, it can still be really hard. I don't know if any of you are on Twitter, but my friend Gabrielle Urbina, who created the very popular audio drama Wolf 359, posted today about like, hey, I'm really having trouble writing today. I can't get more than, 3 words on paper before my internal moppet like punches me in the face and says I'm a failure. So I feel like this is something a lot of people are dealing with. Derek says, oddly enough, and this is not an invitation, I've only recently gotten my first 4-star review instead of the usual 5. It also hit on the things that were bothering me. It's already changed something within the episode directly after reading it. Yeah. Those 1-star reviews can really hurt. And it's one of the reasons that creating is hard. That's the name of tonight's stream, by the way. Tonight's stream is called Creating is Hard because of all of these things, because of fears, because of our circumstances, because of the situations we're in, because life is hard. But a lot of us also create because of these exact things. Creating is how I'm dealing with what's going on outside of my window recently. And creating is the way in which I know I can have an impact on the world. And I know it's how you can have an impact on the world. Because it's really, creating is hard because it puts us in this paradoxical place of being both creator and in a way like king or dictator or what have you. So like in one sense, you're a god. You're creating a world, right? You're creating a podcast or a book or a story. But on the other hand, you're like a victim. You're an ant at the whim of the public for whom it is you create. And there's this weird, uncomfortable duality between the two. So you're kind of all powerful, but you're also incredibly vulnerable because we put so much of ourselves into what it is we create. Jimmy says we are tortured artists because we are compelled to do the hard thing that kicks us in the heart over and over, but we just can't quit it, right? But that's a good thing. I think that's what a lot of us are here to do. Not to get all, live your life's purposey, but I don't know. I think we're here to make a difference. And for a lot of us, creating things, making things is how we make a difference. And going back to the whole like God versus ant mentality that comes with being a creator, it can get really frustrating because on the one hand, we're like, this thing can change the world, but also no one's listening to it. And it can be a really frustrating place. We're all powerful and yet in a way powerless. There's a quote by author Maxine Hong that I love, and I'm going to misquote it. And I've misquoted it before because it's one of my favorite quotes. And so I always share it and I always misquote it. I should just like print it out and put it on my desk so that I can stop misquoting it. But she says, in a time of destruction, create something. And it's really hard. It's a hard thing to struggle with because it's an imperative. And it's really hard to fit imperatives into our lives right now. It also makes it sound like we as creators are solely responsible for creating, and in doing so for affecting change. And that's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of responsibility. Also, if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, my aim here is by the end of tonight's live stream to have encouraged you to be in a good place with yourself and your creations. It is not to tell you, hey, here's all these fears, pay attention to them and never create anything again. Like, I don't want you to take that away from tonight's live stream. But we're often in a really tough place that I think a lot of other people don't understand. We're completely powerful and yet completely vulnerable. We're completely responsible and yet we feel completely invisible. It's just puts us in a weird and uncomfortable place. This is something I hear from a lot of podcasters. Like, I put my message, I put my heart and soul into my podcast and nobody's listening. And it's really frustrating. And I understand that. Derek says, real power is overcoming the fears and creating anyway because we love it. Exactly. And that's what we're going to get back to. That's what we're going to get back to tonight. The power to do something because you love it. How powerful is that? How amazing is that? When Sharon said earlier, why not just go back to the mindset where you were creating this just for you? She hit the nail on the head and provided a spoiler for tonight. I know that a lot of us create because of a larger reason or a larger purpose, because we feel like we have a responsibility to affect change, because we want to impact people's lives, because, you know, we have a podcast about quitting smoking and we want to help people quit smoking, or we have a podcast about X, Y, or Z. We have a message we want to share. But here's what's hard. At the end of the day, you still have to do it because you enjoy it. And I want you to enjoy it. Kyle says, creation is pain in general of sort, but it's also incredibly rewarding. When you hit those milestones, those goals, it feels amazing. So I say relish the pain because you'll be better off in the long run. Jimmy says, it's a good thing because when it pays off, it is freaking glorious. It's so good because when it pays off, and it will pay off, it feels so good. It absolutely does. And what we're creating, the reason that we're creating, this is going back to what I said earlier about the whole reason I started to create Girl in Space. For me, the reason I started creating was so that I could process and understand what was going on in my life. I was using creativity for its cathartic value. And it just so happened to resonate with other people because I wasn't worried about reviews and I wasn't worried about getting swatted down. I was concerned with putting my authentic self and my authentic experience into this thing I was creating. The Writer Life says, change can be small. It could be tiny. Red Skelton said that if in many years you're having a tough day and one of his sketches brought a smile to your face, he'll have made a difference. Absolutely. I posted earlier this week on my blog, I think, and on Facebook. I don't remember where I posted it, about my obsession when I first started podcasting in checking my download stats and how I would hit refresh, hoping that it would somehow generate, I don't know, more reviews. Turns out it doesn't. You cannot generate more reviews simply by hitting refresh on your stats page. Fun fact. If that's your reason for creating, is, I don't want to say like feeding your ego with reviews. I'm not going to say that's not a good reason to create, because you know what? If that's why you create and your creation is helping people, then that's amazing and I'm glad that you're doing it. But if you're creating to explore truths, if you're creating to find joy, if you're creating to help other people, then I think that you will find the process itself, not just the publication, but the process itself, extremely, extremely rewarding. I was on the phone with a friend this week and I had to write something down. And it's just a little paper note. And it's a note to myself giving me permission to have fun creating. Because you're allowed to enjoy your work. And I encourage it. I encourage you to enjoy what you're doing. Because when you're creating, you're living into your fullest self. Terry says, explain to us how you keep the faith. How do you know it's reaching anybody or accomplishing anything? Terry, that is a really, really good question. And I know a lot of people struggle with this. And I want to answer you honestly, because I feel like it would be really easy for me to say like, oh, just keep going and you'll get your audience. But, you know, is that helpful? I don't know. I would say connect intentionally with not just your current audience, but with your prospective audience. So if you've gone through, and I don't know if I have a live stream on working with your audience and discovering who your audience is. But if you have a prospective audience and you've like identified them and you've identified not necessarily the demographics. I don't like to say demographics because that's not meaningful. I don't know what I want to call it right now. If you've identified their hobbies and interests and understand who they are, where they're hanging out on and offline, probably right now during the quarantine where they're hanging out online because offline they're probably home or at work. If you understand where they are and you connect with them over a hobby or interest, then you can start talking with them and building intentional community with them and talking about whatever it is your podcast is about. So if it's about bowling, maybe it's joining some online bowling forums. If it's about poison dart frogs, you know, joining that community online and becoming an actual member. And just reaching out and saying like, hey, I'm discussing this topic on my podcast this week. I'm curious how you feel about this subject. And maybe just very intentionally connecting with people that way. You know, and the other ingredient is time. If you're producing consistently and if you're releasing episodes consistently, it will build over time. And a lot of the time, what's important isn't the number of people you're reaching. Often what's important is what effect you're having. And that's not a quantity thing. That's a quality thing. So I hope that that makes sense too. Ooh, I'm getting a lot of very good comments here. Derek says, for my first show, I saw a regular 20 to 40 downloads per week. I hardly heard from more than 1 or 2 people about the episodes, but knowing that I had those 20 each and every week, I knew I was making a difference in their lives. It was 20 more than I would have touched if I wasn't making it. Exactly. I remember when I first started the Right Now podcast, and I was in the same boat as Derek, and I had 20 people. I had 20 people just listening to my show every week. And I think I was talking to my old boss at the time. I think I was talking to Hendo. And I was like, I don't know if this is worth it. I'm not really reaching, the thousands and millions that I wanted to, that I wanted to reach. My podcast isn't having the impact that I wanted it to have. And he's like, oh, so were you reaching this many people before? Like, were you standing in a room every week and having 20 to 40 people show up in person to listen to you every week and to hear your message and to spend 30 minutes or an hour with you every week? And I was like, well, when you put it that way, yeah. Creating intentional community, being grateful for the people who are showing up for you. Because those people who show up for you at first, those are going to be your super fans later on. Kyle says, if you have an impact on one single person, it's a success, in my opinion. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Sorry, I'm like going through. People here are so wonderful. Oh man. Okay, Leslie says, I would love to see a live stream for reaching out to potential audiences. That's one of my biggest challenges. That sounds like a wonderful idea. I come from a marketing background. Oh, so you're speaking my language. So yeah, somebody help me remember that. Help me remember that we need to do a live stream about reaching out and finding potential audiences and growing our audiences. And, should we be looking at, people who currently listen to podcasts or people who don't currently listen to podcasts? Do we need to be like converting people to podcast listeners first and then telling them about our show? Okay, we'll talk about that during a later live stream. And oh my gosh, how is it almost an hour already? Terry says, thanks so much. And when is Girl in Space returning? Oh, so hey, that's what sparked this whole live stream today, because I have my notebook here. This is Girl in Space Season 2. And I wrote 4 pages last night, read them this morning. They were terrible. I just felt like they were a scene from like a Muppet movie. Like they were just, I mean, I love Muppet movies. Anybody who knows me knows I love the Muppets, but that's the Girl in Space is not a Muppet. And I have to be like totally appropriate, but I was struggling with this so hard and questioning myself. And so what I want to tell you is Girl in Space Season 2 is taking me a while, because circling back to the name of this live stream, creating is hard. Creating is so hard. But it's important and it's good. And it feels good. And it fulfills us. And it moves the earth forward. It really does. I'm like so tempted to like show you like little secrets, but I won't do that. Oh, that's right. Tim reminded me here. Bonus episodes for Girl in Space. They come out on Friday for patrons. So if you're a Girl in Space patron of, I think, $5 a month or more, you're about to get 5 10-minute bonus episodes. So for a total of over 50 minutes of bonus content starring your favorite side characters before they met X. So if you want, you can head over to my Girl in Space Patreon and sign up for that. I'm releasing the very first episode to my RSS stream. And so everyone will get to listen to the first episode, and then everything else you have to be a patron to listen to. So yeah, it's going to be really fun. These episodes were guest written by Tim, my husband, who is also coming out with his own audio drama called Omen, which I'm excited about. Yeah. Oh, great. And now I've like derailed the conversation because people are starting to talk about Girl in Space Muppets. The Sonar Network on Instagram says Muppets and Girl in Space is the crossover we didn't know we needed. Oh my gosh. I want Muppet fan casting. Oh my gosh. Now, would Kermit play X? I feel like Kermit, always plays like the main role. Oh my gosh. And like Chance would be Fozzie Bear. I don't know if Danny would be like Scooter or Beaker. The Fixer would be the Grouch. Tim says Emily Elizabeth from Sesame Street would be X. Oh, I'm very very excited. Oh, Miss Piggy. I feel like Miss Piggy would be Thor. I feel like she has that like kick down the door energy. Danny would be Beaker for sure. Like me. Yep, this is the stream where you get my half-hearted, very sleepy Muppet impressions. So yes. Anyway, I don't know when the Girl in Space Muppets crossover is coming, but boy, I hope that's soon. I'll be looking forward to that. Also looking forward to the bonus episodes coming out this weekend, this Friday. I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for hanging out with me online tonight. Creating is hard. And we know it's hard because we're creators and we've had that experience. We've had the experience of it being hard. We've had the experience of creating being a struggle. We've had the experience of failure and rejection, and it hurts. And it hurts every time. But we've also had the experience of creating being a great joy. Creating is joy and fulfillment. Creating is good. Creating is hard, but creating is good. Because you have something to make. You have a message to share. You have a story to tell. And the only person who can tell it is you. Stephanie says, gotta go. Thanks, Sarah. Stephanie, thank you for being here tonight. I am so grateful for each and every one of you for being here. I hope that, I don't know, I always hope that when I'm talking about creating and the struggles that come with it, it comes across as helpful and something that is relatable and not just me complaining. So I hope this was helpful. My Instagram is telling me I have a minute remaining. So again, I just want to thank you all for being here. Yeah, check out Girl in Space bonus episodes coming out this Friday. What else? I don't know. Join my podcasters group on Facebook. It's out there at Seriously Successful Podcasters. You have to answer a few questions so that I let you in and I know you're not a robot. But yeah, come hang out. We'll have some ongoing discussions. I'll be back next week with another live stream. Until then, please take very good care of yourself and your loved ones. And if it is helpful, if it is safe, if it is a good thing for you to do right now, and if it is the right season for you to do it right now, please do keep creating. All right. I'm going to sign off here on Instagram. And I'm going to bid you guys adieu, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.